Good morning, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are YouTube. So I'm going to slot this in right here because I've got the camera mounted up and I've got a lavalier mic on, so we've got some decent audio going. Just had the Volvo inspected. That means I've owned it for a year. So just a very quick roundup of what the car's been like, how many miles have I done, what's happened to it, and what my thoughts after a year of ownership of the V50. Good points. Right, there's a couple of beautiful ones. The front seats on most Volvo models can be folded flat. So that gives, I wouldn't say an uninterrupted load area, but the ability to load things in that can go all the way from the windscreen to the tailgate. That gives about 3.3 metres if you want to carry long thing objects. And if you've got, say, a bookshelf to carry or something like that and it's been dismantled, that's really useful. Great feature, not seen it on other cars, but that's great. Comfort, it's very comfortable, it drives beautifully, it's economical. The brakes, this one has an ever so slightly warped disc. It's not enough to warrant changing it, but it's just there. That's not really a fault of the car, that's just something that happens to cars sometimes. So, what's it been like in terms of running costs? I've had to have a pair of front tyres. They were £110 each, and they weren't the cheapest by a long shot. I could have got them for 70, so they're not too bad. And they were actually worn by the tracking being slightly out, so again, that's more down to the previous user. Other than that, it's had one service, which cost £180. I'm averaging about 45 mpg, though on a run I achieve nearly 60 mpg, which is great. That's really good. Reliability, I have had two problems, both of which were relatively minor. After a heavy downpour at Easter, I started getting an airbag warning light, and I made a couple of futile attempts, so just put that down because the sun's out, made a few futile attempts to sort it, did a bit of homework, and found out it's quite a common problem with the contacts in the door, and the pins corrode, and because it's a CAN bus system, it throws the entire system into complete disarray. So the solution for that turned out to be to unplug the door connector from the door loom, which is done without taking the door apart. It's just in the boot that sits in the door shut, the rubber boot, not the trunk as the Americans would say. Unplug it, squirt it with contact cleaner, plug it back in, problem solved. So that really was nothing. It's something you can do yourself. If you've got some obscure problems, like your electric windows don't work, your mirrors don't work, the lights for the switches on the doors stay on, and your airbag light is on, do that before paying any money to a dealer. It's a very simple job. I will probably go through how to do it at some point, but it is a very quick fix, and it will do no harm. So if it doesn't work, you've lost nothing. The other problem I had, I was a little afraid it was going to be a big problem, but it actually turned out not to be that major. I started to smoke heavily, not me, the car. The car started to smoke very heavily, and it was losing power and not boosting smoothly. And I noticed also it just didn't feel right in general. And then I had a DPF warning come up saying the soot filter was full. Now DPFs can now be cleaned. They actually inject a liquid into them that cleans them through, so you don't need to replace the whole DPF. DPF, of course, is diesel particulate filter. So I booked it in to get the DPF cleaned, and the guy diagnosed it, and he said, now DPF problems are normally a symptom of something else. They generally stay quite clear because they do what's called a regen, which is where the car cleans its own DPF. If you ever see a diesel car going down the road making a lot of grey smoke on a motorway, it's probably doing a regen. So the DPF wasn't blocked, it was a sensor fault. That was diagnosed and sorted, and the smoke and running problem, which probably triggered the sensor fault, was caused by nothing more than a split boost hose. So the total job was to replace the boost hose, which is not a surprise on an 8.5, 9-year-old car. You know, hoses harden off with age, and boost hoses do live a tricky life. So the boost hose was replaced, a new sensor put on, which was quite expensive, and the whole job came to just under £400. Not a big deal, it's not something I expect to ever do again. So realistically, that's all the car has needed, which I think for a car that has now got nearly 113,000 miles on it is not bad in a year's motoring, and there's no indication that anything else is required. I've changed a couple of other little things just for my own satisfaction, such as anti-roll bar drop links and bushes at the back, and I've put new rear shocks on for the MOT because they were getting a bit tired, but that's just really consumable item. both jobs were ridiculously easy. You could change the anti-roll bar links, the anti-roll bar bushes, the rear shocks and top mounts in probably an hour and a half. It took longer to take the wheels off than it did to change the shocks and top mounts. I utterly recommend, if you're doing rear shocks on one of these, to change the gaiters, the bump stops and the top mounts at the same time. They're very inexpensive parts. I purchased the whole assembly, so the shocks, bump stops, gaiters and top mounts via eBay, and they're decent quality parts, and the whole lot combined was £100 for both sides. So it's not worth putting a £50 pair of shocks on to only have to take them off again in a year's time because the top mounts gone. The top mounts are £12 each or something around that area. So again, it is simply a false economy to not change them. So yeah, overall, what's my verdict on the car? What would I give it? I would say, a score out of 10, I'm going to give it a solid 8.5. There are a couple of things which aren't as good as they could be, but not many. The rear seat space is a little less cavernous than you would expect, although it's adequate. I took it down on a 1,500 mile drive down to the French Alps in December and into January, and that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we drove from here, literally from here actually. I mean, my journey started about 4 miles down the road, and we went down to a village called Brid-le-Bain where we were staying, but we also went to Val Thorens and into a number of places, and had a really good time. Some friends of mine were snowboarding and skiing and things like that. We got the snowboard in the car without a problem, and it was great. And we had to stop twice for fuel, and it was a very minimal amount of fuel. I think we got down there on sort of 65 quid's worth of fuel, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, that equates to about 58 miles per gallon. Obviously that's UK gallons, so that would be about 51, I think, mpg US. Really good fuel economy, and it's at 85 miles an hour on the French auto routes, absolutely beautifully. So yeah, totally recommend the car. It won't be to everybody's taste. The earlier models are probably not quite as good in terms of reliability as the later ones. You can spot the facelift versions most easily by the tail lights. There's two different types of tail lights, and that will tell you which version you've got. But I would not, the difference in reliability and build quality between the two Phase 1 and Phase 2 cars is not so great that you would take a bad Phase 2 over a good Phase 1. And equally, by this stage in time, any of the issues on a Phase 1 car would have been sorted anyway. They tended to be more electrical issues, and they're not complicated or big issues, so there's nothing to worry about. Any used car of this age could have issues, so you don't want to stop buying one because it might have an issue. If you read the internet, you'll never buy any car, because no matter what car you find, you'll find someone on the internet that's had loads of trouble. And of course, no one ever posts up, oh, I've had this car for 5 years, it's never missed a beat, it's just been a car, because I haven't thought about it. So people tend to complain much more than they praise. So you can always assume for every one person reporting a fault, there'll be 100 people that have never had any problems at all. So yeah, I like this car. It's got a bit more personality than BMW or Mercedes, and I say that my brother's a hardcore Mercedes fan, sorry, but there you go. I find them an interesting alternative to the German premium cars. Yeah, get a Volvo. I like them. But anyway, that's enough waffle. This has probably been quite a bit of waffle, but no, it sounds just shooting a bit of dead time, so we're heading over to the garage and we're going to go and play with some nitrous oxide. But if you like these videos, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you soon.